3 days of testing this year that took place at Bahrain. Sam, let's start with you. I'm going to open the floor. Not necessarily going to take you one direction or another, just anything that caught your eye.
The first thing that caught my eye was Ollie Behrman's engine cover flying down the road. Here's some analysis.
He was driving a Haas, right? Not an Aston Martin.
Well, a lot of things seem to be flying off sports cars or race cars around the Middle East. So
it's weight shedding, mate. It's just weight shedding.
That's it. Engine cooling.
Yeah.
That was comical. So in the races, Haas, I know you're cooking. Don't cook that hard. That should be falling off. On a serious note, I'm going to start with reigning drivers champion Max Verstappen and the team that he is outfitting for, as always, Red Bull. They did not have a smooth testing in the Middle East. They had a water leak issue on Liam Lawson's car. They were clearly struggling with some mass understeer, which I thought was highlighted heavily by the flow vis being put onto one side of the car on multiple occasions throughout the entire 3 days that was being
late
displayed.
In the test as well.
Really late in the test. And I can't remember who it was now that supplied the quote, but came out and said, this test has not gone smoothly and we've got some issues that need to be resolved. And I think Red Bull are on the back foot. Does that mean they're going to be slow? No, I'm sure Red Bull will easily find their way through it. We know what they're like. But for me, Red Bull are maybe the slowest of the top 4 right now in terms of security and overall comfortable pace. They were the ones that shocked me the most with where I felt they sat on those longer runs. I thought they'd be a little bit closer. And Max Verstappen, I don't know if he'll get a fine for this or not, but there were a few instances of him raising the middle finger to his own car and some of the team. So not pleased, not best pleased. So Red Bull for me with the immediate jump out of struggling more than I expected.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't think the pace was too bad, but it looked a real handful. There was a lap quite late on the 3rd day of testing, and Verstappen's going fairly quickly at this point, but he is having to work so hard every corner to get it to do what he wants it to do. Like, it just did not look nice whatsoever. Harry, any key standouts for you?
I think just on that Verstappen point, he'll win races this year, I think, but he will be hustling with a capital H to get that car to work. Key standout for me, I'm going to go with Carlos Sainz and the Williams.
Is that how we say it now?
Yep. Look, I don't think there were glory runs by Williams, and Ben, you're very sad about the fact there were no proper glory runs at the end.
What are you doing, Sauber?
Yeah.
That was your time to shine.
Yeah, Bortoletto, come on, it's your dream.
It's your dream to drive there. But I think, Carlos Sainz, how well, and we know this about Sainz because he's changed teams. He's been at every team basically now in F1, but he's changed teams a lot. But every time he has adapted very quickly. And I think that was evident already. And I think it was Albon, wasn't it, in the comms box saying, complimenting him on how well that he's got up to speed. Said with a little bit of worry in his voice. But anyway.
Oh, God. It's quite good.
He's not Logan Sargent, is he?
Yeah. But I think that, that reflects on how well Sainz was driving in the test. But Williams as a whole, I'm not saying they're going to jump to the front of the field, but they look much more solid than they did last year. And obviously it was highlighted that they beat the time they did in Quali 2024 at Bahrain already, and on day one. Now I know they didn't read too much into times, but that you can't not when they're that evident. But the car looks good. Pretty good out there. So, they could be up there with. Maybe they're up there with that P5 fight with Aston Martin, if that's where we think they're going to be.
Whoa, that's, hold on. They're up there in that P5 fight. I don't think the words Aston Martin are going to be entering anytime soon.
Hey, Adrian Newey starts work tomorrow.
Oh, good. He's going to walk in there and see one door's come off. Fernando Alonso's next retired, and Lance Stroll's the only man standing. He's to go, I quit.
Stroll's not the only man standing. He was ill.
That's true. Yeah. He's in the toilet.
Fernando's the only one standing. The Aston Martin one's a weird one because they seem like they are happier with the car, but it doesn't look, unless they really are hiding it, but everyone seems to be happier with it, but then they're like, don't look that good still. It's a bit of a strange one. Whether they are hiding it, I don't know, but interesting one.
They focused a lot on the drivability of the car and making it just nicer to drive, which seems to be the case, but it's still got to go quick.
Things that make cars nicer to drive: aircon, Nice radio, sunroof.
That's what they got in there now. Alonso's old. He's just give me the home comforts.
Heated seats for the colder races. Not going any faster though, are we, Aston Martin? I was quite worried, actually more so than any other team. Aston Martin were the team that made me go, it doesn't look like they feel particularly quick in comparison to where they were. Again, it's only testing, can't read so much into it, but Williams were the team that jumped out to me as immediately what seemed most improved. And by most improved, I mean, I think they'll be fighting in that midfield region. And Aston Martin, who were leading that midfield region, I think are going to be a little bit further back. And they're either hoping that Adrian Newey walks in and makes some immediate, impactful changes, or they're going to have to really grit their teeth and knuckle down and hope that 2026 is a huge springboard back up the grid again, because it doesn't feel positive. I think Andy Cowell said that they've discovered a lot of areas in the car that need a lot of development and a lot of focus, because it's not looking positive.
Yeah, I will join you both in saying that Williams really stood out, and a lot was made of both Williams and Alpine and how far they've come from last year's test and how they were quite a bit quicker in this test than they were in qualifying 12 months ago at the Bahrain Grand Prix. I think the difference between both Williams and Alpine, who both had, I think, pretty good tests, Alpine is much a continuation from where they were at the end of last season, where they did pick up pace throughout the last few Grand Prix. Williams seemed to have made a lot of progress in the off season, because we didn't see this from them in Abu Dhabi and Qatar, right? The last couple of races of 2024. Whatever the reason is, I know they had a big problem with the weight of the car last year, whether they've really solved that. But there's something that they've done that I think does point to them, at least at the start of the season, being somewhere a bit more competitive in the midfield. I think my biggest takeaway was, and it's a bit of a generic one, this was very obviously the last year of a set of regulations, because there were, across 3 days of running, and I don't know how many laps were completed by the 10 teams overall. It was probably in the region of, I don't know, 3,500 across 3 days.
Higher.
We're not playing that one today. Sorry, mate. The biggest takeaway was like these cars are just bulletproof at this point. Like the biggest reliability issues we had were track related, with broken glass, a power outage, and a bus on the track. Like all of the all of the problems were not with the cars, which. Yeah, I think it is largely in part to the fact that we've had a number of years on these sets of regulations now, and everyone seems to be very comfortable. Even the likes of Red Bull, as you mentioned, who didn't have a smooth test. Aston Martin similarly didn't get that many laps under their belt compared to the competition. They still both did over 300 laps. That's 100 laps a day. They still did what will work out to be like 5.5 Grand Prix. So no one had a horrendous test, I don't think.
No, but there were a couple of controversies that have come out of testing, as there always are. Red Bull have already started declaring that people are cheating, which is great within the first 3 days of the new season, which you love to see it. They don't be sleeping or no cheaters. And mini DRS wars apparently are back. Baby DRS, as I'm going to coin it. You've got Mario and Baby Mario. Well, now we've got DRS and Baby DRS. And that is, for those who aren't aware, the flexing of the rear wing once you achieve very high speed. And essentially, the Air Force flexes that rear wing back to give a more streamlined approach to the car, allowing for higher top speeds. Mercedes being the main culprit of this, and Mercedes I thought it had a really strong testing. I thought them and Ferrari in their longer runs looked very comparable, just behind McLaren, I think. And that tells me that they are trying to actually do stuff where it seems they may understand what a Formula One car is.
Now.
Do you know what Bahrain was all week?
What's that?
Very cold.
Very cold. Yeah, that's
very
rained
cold.
a lot, and it was cold.
It'll be hot in Melbourne, and they'll be last.
I mean, it's so true. It's so true. This is why testing, you can't read into it. But McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, all look like they've got a little bit of flex. And then we've got some interesting movements on the front wing as well, with the end plates moving with the tyres. And bumping up and down his pen is gratefully displaying with his hands. It's going to be a real war of words, I think, with kind of aerodynamic chat. And if anyone is experts at aerodynamic chat, it's this podcast. Stay right here.
Don't turn off, please.
Don't change the channel, please.
Oh, dear.
I think the test as a whole did buy into the idea that we might still get a very close season because whilst there are a few saying that McLaren might have a small advantage, most don't think it's a landslide. And Red Bull and Mercedes and Ferrari, like you say, Red Bull didn't have a smooth test, but pace-wise, those 4 teams still look to be, you can still throw a blank over them. There doesn't seem to be much in it. And you're right, I do think this buys into the idea that mini DRS wars probably isn't over. We know that front wing flex is allowed until the Spanish Grand Prix, and we might well see whatever the picture is right now be the case for the first however many races that is, and then we get something different after Spain. But yeah, I don't think those war of words are done. Harry, you've been on the hype train that this could be a very close season. Did the test enforce that idea, or did it make you less encouraging at that one? What do you think?
I've added 2 more carriages to that train.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah. Blimey. Better than Great Western Rail over here.
Well, I mean, let's not go too far, mate. GWR for the win.
Difficult.
Well, very conflicting opinions there, folks.
That's a man who has to catch a lot of GWR trains.
90% of my search history is delay repay.
Folks, if you're not from the UK, Great Western Rail is the railway for the West.
And it's great.
And it's Great Western Rail.
Of all the things it claims to be, Western is the only one that's true. It's not a railway. It is not great.
Average Western Railway. Right. Look, I still think you're right. I think McLaren clearly look like they are the favourites. But you were just saying about the weather and how representative testing was. I know we used to go to Barcelona and they've moved it to Bahrain to make it more representative. Might as well have been in the UK at Silverstone. It was
the weirdest Bahrain we've had in a long time.
So strange. Weather was cold, rainy.
Electricity didn't work.
Electricity didn't work. There was a bus. I think day 3 was probably the most representative, but given that fact, I think there's a lot of variables still in there that we've which means we don't fully know the picture, but it looks close, and I'm hopeful that if it looks that close in testing, when you actually get into a competitive situation when everyone is putting their cards on the table, that it will be a close season. And even if McLaren have a slight edge, we've seen last year, it doesn't matter if you've got the fastest car, they can be silly. So there are many things that happen, and if it's that close, there'll be pressure, and that's when people crack. Because pressure for tyres.
Pressure's for tyres.
Yeah, I love how our second segment is going to be tyre chat as well.
Alex Shearer is the special guest.
He's not, folks.
Sam would pop.
I wouldn't be on the show. I'd have died.
Yeah, I think if you look back to last year's testing as well, Red Bull was so dominant there, and it was a true reflection, but it lasted for 6 races. So McLaren having an advantage now, maybe they do have an advantage for 5 races.
There was no GP smiling like a menace lap from anyone this time. So that's a good sign.
Haas last year basically had no intention of going quickly in testing whatsoever, just focusing on long runs. Sam, it seemed a fairly similar test from them again this year. Komatsu said afterwards it wasn't a perfect test, but equally he was content going into the new season. Some suggesting that they didn't run any laps at all without at least half a tank of fuel in the car. Do you think that maybe they'll be more competitive than what they showed?
I think Haas might not know if they're going to be more competitive or not if they show. They really didn't do any light runs at all for the entire 3 days. But what was promising for Haas, and Komatsu hasn't left that kick shed in a year and a bit now, is they looked really positive on their longer runs. And clearly their developments are moving them towards battling through midfield scenarios, having to challenge with that heavier fuel settings when the tyres are working long form for them. There's a lot to be gained on long-form race pace. If you can perform an overcut or you can make the undercut work where you've got to push ahead on heavier fuel, you can really make up positions there. And it looks as though their tactic is, hey, with someone like Behrman in the car and Ocon, who is good at qualifying, but there's never been, one of these qualifiers we talk about as being sensational. You've lost Hulkenberg, for example, who is very good at qualifying. why not focus on that long form run pace where we have got drivers that can make tyres work long term, that maybe want to drive in clean air for long periods of time to jump their opposition? I was oddly buoyed by Haas's ability to really put together long form pace, and it actually looked very competitive. So overall, good test from Haas. Let's just hope they're not so slow in one lap pace that they may be starting 17th and 18th, because that would really defeat the object.
Harry, before we stop talking about testing and move on to the next topic, if we're not looking specifically at teams and drivers and we're just looking at testing as a whole, any changes to testing required, do you think, for the next couple of years?
I don't think so. I don't dislike I think it was a weird test, and that was just a lot of odd stuff happened.
Funny.
Just funny, isn't it?
More buses.
More buses. No, less buses. I enjoy the fact that it rained and only 2 teams brought intermediate tyres. That is funny. I mean, you don't expect it in Bahrain, but still, you'd at least bring 1 set, surely. Anyway,
Aston Martin brought 3.
They had the weather report.
Are we sure they know what's going on? Yeah. Are we sure they're okay?
Hey, it rained. So anyway, but generally, I think it's 3 days of testing. You get on with it. If the cars, as you mentioned, Ben, are so reliable now, they don't need more than that. They've done so many laps already, more laps than they used to do over like 6 days of testing. So, I don't think I'd change it. Maybe you mix up the circuit. I don't know, but Bahrain generally is quite a good place to go. Just odd weather this year.
Or just kick any rookies in for like half a day. Make it mandatory for them to have half a day of running.
I think I'd do that elsewhere.
Yeah.
Leave testing for testing. Testing for testing.
Yeah. When testing was testing. It wasn't woke.
Wasn't woke testing.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's a woke joke.
A woke joke.
It's a woke.
So in a conclusion, no.
Good stuff. Thanks, Harry. Yeah, I know a few drivers like Alonso has said in the past. I think Carlos Sainz had some comments this weekend as well about they need more time in the cars. Get on with it. I think 3 days is absolutely fine. I don't mind the idea of adding half a day of mandatory running for a rookie, or even if you made it 4 days and then you had 1 day for the rookies. I think from a pure cost-saving perspective, it would make a lot of sense to keep it at the same event. Although I take your point as well, Harry, that maybe you should just leave testing for testing. But yeah, the cars are reliable enough now. Maybe I wouldn't be disappointed with losing a day if it's not like the first year or two of a set of regulations. I'm fine with like next year, for example, being 3 days. I wouldn't mind it going down to 2, in all honesty.
Imagine if, sorry to cut in on you.
Yeah, of course.
Imagine if part of where you finished in the championship alluded to how much on-track testing time you got at the start of the season.
Well, I mean, we've already got that with wind tunnel time. Maybe that's the next step.
They used to do that with this is like the noughties, but free practice time. You like lower teams get an extra session or something, wouldn't they?
They got the Friday session. Oh,
there was
Friday?
One extra Friday session. Yeah, Friday morning.
I mean, you imagine if we opened it up to 4 days of testing, and Sauber and Williams and RB got all 4 days, and then you get 3 days for that midfield, and the top 4 only got 2 days. That could be quite interesting.
Yeah, maybe so. The other point I'd make as well, I would have testing on a circuit that isn't on the calendar.
Agreed.
I just would like a completely neutral venue for that. I would offer up Snetterton.
That is my one and only option.
In January.
What's the weather here in January? Yeah. Cold.
So Fernando, what did you learn from this test? Nothing.
I'm very cold.
I'm so cold.
Mercedes 15 seconds clear of everyone.
Total we're still going to lose, guys.
Okay, that'll do it for the late-breaking testing review. Obviously, relating to testing, we have got predictions coming up in our next episode on Wednesday, so you can hear more about what we think might happen for the 2025 season.